Counseling Women by Burley Rutland. The importance of counseling women to multicultural counseling. This begins with an examination of demographics, gender role socialization, and sexism. Some demographic information related to women's multicultural concerns includes that women are paid an average of 28% less for similar jobs and are 11% more likely to live in poverty. Gender role concerns include bias in personal relationships, schooling, and workplaces. This works in a couple of different ways in that women are discriminated against in these situations and also may be trained or taught through their gender role socialization that this discrimination or different treatment is acceptable and normal and something that they should be willing to participate in. Sexism, on the other hand, is a more direct gender-based discrimination that may be experienced in social, professional, and personal situations as well. There are two main themes that have been identified for counseling women. These are themes for how the counselor themselves interacts with women and the multicultural concerns that they should be aware of. So on the self theme, this depends on how the counselor is educated, what their experience level is, and the effect of supervision on the counselor's work. On the other dimension, this involves the counselor's relationships with their colleagues, that they may discuss their approach to counseling with, their theoretical orientation, how they apply theory, specifically in this case to women. It also involves the counselor's relationships with the local and wider authorities. So local authority would be the philosophy of the practice they're a part of, how their co-workers influence them, these types of things. Then the wider authorities would be the state governing body and their approach, the legal requirements and their approach to counseling women, and also the ethical approach, which would depend on the code of ethics that the counselor subscribes to. Some gender-specific life experiences that affect women in a unique way are miscarriages. Obviously, miscarriages affect both men and women, but they tend to affect women differently, having lost a life that was growing within their body. So this is something that would require training, especially for a male counselor or a female counselor who has not experienced a miscarriage, to really understand how this affects a female and to be able to counsel appropriately. Rape is also another concern that's not a uniquely female concern, but largely rape is something that affects females more so than men. Rape has been demonstrated to lead to a 7.5 time increase in the likelihood of suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD, and a 3.1 time increase for the likelihood of serious depression and long-term depression. Postpartum depression is also a uniquely female concern related to depression that may start after the birth of a child. All of these specific gender-related issues are things that point to the importance of a counselor being trained in the multicultural counseling of women. The essential elements of counseling women. There are three key elements to a counselor's ability to effectively counsel women, and that is their training, experience, and supervision. We've already touched on this a little bit, but to be competent as a counselor who works with female clients, their training, experience, and supervision should be specifically related to working with women, at least to some degree, so they have some competency there. So that's the first. Competency is the first element broken down into these three keys. There's a need for training related to gender, relationships, and the equality and inequality experienced by women. A counselor needs to be able to deliver compassionate, effective care to women who experience intimate partner violence, which is essential for the well-being of women and their families. A counselor's understanding of religion's role in supporting oppression of women, encouraging unhealthy gender roles, and convictions regarding marriage is also critical. And importantly, this is not specifically an American concern or a Christian concern, either inside or outside the United States. This is also a concern in other major world religions such as Islam and Hinduism. Resistance to help seeking is different among women and men, and different yet still among different ethnic and cultural groups within females themselves. Mexican American women specifically have been demonstrated to have a self-stigma or group stigma resulting from breaking cohesion with the family group. The idea of family comes first, and that the family takes care of itself and provides their own counseling, typically through a matriarch, can lead to Mexican American women being resistant to receiving professional counseling. This is especially important in these matriarchal groups, especially if the woman who sees herself as the matriarch is the one who is seeking counseling or having a mental health concern. This can lead her to view herself as weak, or other members of her family to see herself as weak and diminish her role as the matriarch. This is an essential element to counseling women, in that there are unique roles of these women that need to be considered by the counselor when they are interacting with a female who is seeking help. Agreement or disagreement with author's presentation. There's a clear need among the articles reviewed in this presentation that for women to be understood as a specific group. It's clear that women have unique issues that warrant consideration by the counseling profession. However, some of the conclusions in the psychological research reviewed in this presentation appear to be related to the bias of the researchers. Specifically, Choi et al. In their 2019 article detail a view of religion and the role of the church and family in mental health seeking behaviors as a net negative. This is not necessarily true, and the article doesn't dive too far into a potential alternative explanation here. It does imply that only counselors can help people and improve their mental health, and that the church and family are inadequate resources. In conclusion, women should be studied as a unique population by all mental health professionals, as every counselor will encounter women's issues in their career. Counseling men requires an understanding of women's issues to address clients' concerns related to interactions with women. So even if a counselor specifically counsels men only, they still need to develop, through their education, training, and supervision, an understanding of women's issues, so that when they're counseling men who are obviously interacting with women, can be counseled in a way that considers these women's issues as related to the females they're interacting with. Also important to note that research must be read and evaluated critically to avoid alignment with conclusions that may be drawn out of researcher bias. On the other hand, the reader must also be aware of their own bias in evaluating research to remain open to new ideas. This is a review of the references used in this presentation on this slide and on this slide.